Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, I am Ahmed Mumtaz Mustesan, your teacher for CSC 141 Introduction to Computer Programming. Remember, in the last lecture we talked about preprocessor directives. There were few topics that I could not complete it in my last lecture, so I will start with the same topic, that is preprocessor directives, and would like to finish it first. Then we'll start a new topic today. Okay, we talked about different preprocessor directives. We talked about defined directives. We talked about include directives, if defined, if not defined, and then also we said that there are few directives that facilitate you to have a conditional compilation of the source code. For that purpose we had got if, else, and if facilities through which we can just put the test into certain part of our code and decide whether we want to include that particular code for our compiler or not. And remember, if we want to include that code for that particular compiler, mean its object code will be generated, and once the object code is generated, then the executable code will be generated. If we skip some part of our code and not provide it to the compiler, then its object code is not generated, and obviously its executable is not generated. So I continue with this if and if directives. So the if directive can be used to test whether an expansion evaluates to a non-zero value or not. If the result of the expansion is non-zero, non-zero किसे कहते हैं? True के लिए. So if it is non-zero, means it is true, then subsequent lines followed by the if or else are executed. Otherwise the control comes out of the if structure. We can take an example here. If test is less than equal to 5, means it results to a non-zero value, means it results to true, then statement 1, 2 and 3. But if it is not less than that, then it should execute the means it should compile statement 4, 5 and 6. So if the expression test is less than equal to 5, it evaluates to be true, the statement number 1, 2 and 3 are compiled, otherwise statement number 4, 5 and 6 are compiled. In place of the expression test less than 5, other expressions like level is equal to high or level is equal to low or adopter is equal to CGA can also be used. Means कि आप कोई भी test use कर सकते हैं whichever you want and whichever data you have and you want to test it. On the basis of that test, you can include certain part of code or not. For example, if adopter is equal to VGA, then code for the videographic adapter that you will provide somewhere in between this particular test, where is my cursor, you can put the code here, okay, and that code will be compiled. Else the code that you will provide it for the SVGA, as you test again, else if adapter is SVGA, then the code here will be compiled. Else the code for the XGA, extended graphic adapter, will be compiled. So you can see that in which environment you are going to run your program. So for that purpose you just need to define one variable, and that you can also do with the help of your header files or anywhere you want. You just need to compile and run it once and your code is ready to be executed. You are not supposed to carry out lot of typing or lot of the corrections made in your particular code. Okay, so we can just repeat that with the else if directive expansion also. With if we can also have else if, but if we have an else if, then you can see that the code becomes even more compact. And now we can see that if adapter VGA, then code this one, else if adapter is SVGA, code is this one, else the code is this one. So with this elif, जो कि equivalent to है else if का, is facilitating you to put a very compact code, and that code will tell the compiler which part of the code you want that should be compiled, and this is done by the preprocessor. यानी कि compiler को ये तमाम facilitation preprocessor, which is a utility available with the C compiler, it carries out this task on behalf of the compiler and prepares the ready and the code which is readily available to the compiler for compiling it. Okay. There are few more miscellaneous directives that are available in the preprocessor directives, although these two directives which are available are not very commonly used. They are very rarely used, but since we have discussed almost all directives, so I decided that instead of skipping that, we should also discuss it. But I will not take too much time. I will just quickly go through it. Undefined. We can define a template and we can undefine the template. Okay, we'll see that what do we gain by undefining a template. Program A. Program A, that is also another directive. We also like to see that what it does. First of all, undefined directive. On some occasion, it may be desirable to cause a defined name to become undefined. This can be accomplished by a directive, that is undefined directive of preprocessing directive, that facilitate us in undefining certain template that we have defined with the help of defined directives. So we can undefine, for example, Pentium would cause the definition of Pentium to be removed from the system, and all subsequent if defined Pentium statements would evaluate to false. So you can skip the code if you want, or you can take certain decision if you want by, for example, कर क्या रहे हैं हम, upper part portion के अंदर हम define use कर रहे हैं, and on the basis of that we take certain decision. Then we decide that now this undefined, instead of having this definition, now this particular section of the program should not use it, so you can say undefined. If you say undefined, so all the definition that you have provided is out, and it as if that you have not defined it. In practice, we seldom require to undefine a macro, but for some reason it is there, and if it is there, then we should know about that. Then pragma, P-R-A-G-M-A, pragma directive. The directive is another special purpose directive that to turn on and off certain feature. For example, you want to, again, this defined and undefined hai, so similarly you can on and off feature hai. Instead I go into this detail, you can just read it out, the information that I have provided, that is in the certain environments where the compiler generates the listing or suppress the listing, do one thing or not do another thing, so you can do that. But I will quickly come up to an example of this pragma. And these directives allow us to specify functions that are called upon program startup. Startup program कौन सा होता है? Main से पहले. Or program exit means just before going the control back to the operating system. When you are transferring the control back, this part can be executed. For example, we have defined two functions, function 1, fun1 here, and fun2. We say pragma startup fun1, this exit at the time of program pragma, it's not program, exit fun2. Okay, so what will happen? This is your main program. At the time of the startup here, when the control is transferred to the main, you said that at the startup time it should execute this fun1, means this function should be executed first. Then it execute the main, and at the time you execute the exit part here, you should execute fun2, then this part is executed here. Okay, so basically the function 1 and function 2 should neither receive nor return any value, because it's the control that have exclusively been passed on to that particular function to do certain jobs. If we want two functions to get executed at a startup, then their progma should be defined in a reverse order. अगर आप किसी भी order में उसको आप define कर सकते हैं in which you want to get them called. So in this previous example जो मैंने अभी आपको बताई, इसमें you are in the beginning you are in fun1, then you are in the main, and then जब आप start करने जा रहे थे तो आपने fun1 को call किया, start के साथ आपने इसको मैसेज दिया था, क्या मैसेज दिया था? progma start fun1, so it's executing this part. Then what will happen? The control comes to the main is executed, जो भी program है. This is just for example, so I have just kept it very simple, so you can execute this part. And now at the time you exit, so you said that exit fun2, so this fun2 is executed. So with this, students, we have almost completed the facilities and the directives that are available to us in the preprocessor, and we call it as a preprocessor directives. So we can quickly summarize before we start the next topic. The preprocessor directives enable the programmer to write programs that are easy to develop, read, modify, and transport to different platforms, to different computer systems. Okay, that was one of the major utilization of the include directives or the preprocessor directive. और ये किस directive की बात कर रहे हैं? Defined directives की बात कर रहे हैं. Next, we can make use of the various preprocessor directives such as define, include, if defined, else, and if, and else if in our program. कहीं पे भी हम इसको यूज कर सकते हैं, कोई बाइंडिंग नहीं है, but usually we use it before the main program, but it's not a binding. You can use it anywhere you like and any part of your program. The directives like undefined and progma are also useful, although they are seldom used. Okay, so I expect from you that now you are familiar with these preprocessor directives, and if required you should be able to use it. इससे पहले आप इसको use कर रहे थे blindly, but now you know it and now you just try to go into it. इसको थोड़ा सा और deep study करें. आपकी textbook में the details are there, the examples are there, so with the help of the examples and the description provided in your textbook, please go through that particular chapter. You will find that in the book the introductory part is given in one chapter just after the functions, and the detailed part is given in the later part of the chapter, which I think is chapter number 12 somewhere 11 or 12, but the introductory part is just after the functions. So that's why I have also decided that I should discuss it just after the particular area where just after the functions topic. Okay, dear students, we have finished this topic. Let's start fresh. Okay, I hope you are still fresh. The new lesson, a new topic, which is called arrays. We have defined variables, we have used variables, but C language provides a capability that enables the user to design a set of similar data types called array. It will take some time to understand this particular statement. Let's take an example. Suppose we define integer x. Suppose x is equal to 5. Then we say x is equal to 10 and print the value of x. What it will print? Obviously, it will print x is equal to 10. Why? Because when we assigned a new value to the memory location, that was just a single memory location. So when we said x is equal to 5, the content of x was 5. When we reassigned another value, अब container तो एक ही है, location तो एक ही है, you put the second value. So what it should do? या तो refuse कर दे कि I already have 5, I am not going to accommodate 10, but this it cannot do. So it obey your instruction and put the new value that overrides the previous value. Okay, this is very important to understand. So when we print, it will print 10. So we know that the variables, ordinary variables, या जो वेरिएबल अभी तक हमने यूज किए हैं, कैन होल्ड ओनली वन सिंगल वैल्यू. बट देर आर सर्टन सिचुएशंस वेयर वी रिक्वायर दैट अ वेरिएबल शुड होल्ड मोर देन वन वैल्यू. ओके, व्हाट कुड बी द एग्जांपल? सपोज एक क्लास में 100 स्टूडेंट्स हैं and you want to compute the percentage of the class, percentage of introduction to computer programming. इस सब्जेक्ट में क्लास के हर बच्चे की क्या परफॉर्मेंस रही और ओवरऑल क्लास की परफॉर्मेंस कैसे रही, इसकी एवरेज हमने निकालनी है. हाउ कैन वी डू दैट? 100 variables, we require 100 variables. There are 100 students, so we require 100 variables, x1, x2, x3, x4, and then we read the value of each and every variable. और जब उसकी कोडिंग करने बैठेंगे तो 100 वेरिएबल्स को टाइप भी करना पड़ेगा 1 से लेके 100 तक. इट्स वेरी टायरसम, ट्रबलसम एंड डिफिकल्ट. सो कंस्ट्रक्ट वन वेरिएबल that should change. हम क्या चेंज कर रहे हैं? x1, x2, x3, x4. तो चेंज क्या हो रहा है? 1, 2, 3, 4. So if we call it as a subscript, तो वेरिएबल का नाम तो हमने x ही रखा हुआ है. So how can we do that? So that one variable should accommodate 100 values and we should just change the subscript. Okay? जिस तरह मैथमेटिक्स में आप कहते हैं x1, x2, x3 up to x100. We should also have this facility. How can we have this facility? So this facility can be provided with the help of a concept called arrays. So array is a collective name given to the group of similar quantities. These similar quantities could be percentage marks of 100 students or salaries of 300 employees or age of 50 employees. Dear students, अगर ये हो जाए तो हमारी ज़िंदगी आसान हो जाएगी. So array is a very useful data structure that is available to us in C programming, in which we can put the similar quantities of the data. अब this is, जब कोई facility आती है तो कोई responsibility भी आती है, कोई restrictions भी होती हैं. So I will request you to please concentrate with me and try to find out कि what are the facilities and what are the restrictions. Okay? So अभी हम array को further explore करते हैं. We said that the quantities must be similar. सिमिलर क्या मतलब? कि डेटा टाइप सेम होना चाहिए. और जब डेटा टाइप सेम होना चाहिए, डेटा टाइप्स कौन कौन से हैं सी में? वी सेड दैट देयर आर 5 डेटा टाइप्स. यू रिमेंबर दैट? कौन कौन से? इंट, लॉन्ग 5 की लिस्ट में नहीं आता है ना. क्यों? वी सेड इंटीजर, फ्लोट, डबल, कैरेक्टर. 5वां कौन सा है? नथिंग. Nothing means void. So these are the 5 data types that we have studied. So whenever we have to define an array. This array should be of the same data type. और अगर same data type हम यूज करेंगे तो हम इसको कहेंगे होमोजीनियस डेटा टाइप. होमोजीनियस मीन्स एक जैसी खासियत रखने वाला डेटा टाइप. अगर एक एलिमेंट इंटीजर है तो सारे एलिमेंट इंटीजर होंगे. अगर एक मेंबर फ्लोट है तो सारे मेंबर फ्लोट होंगे. यू कैन नॉट मिक्स एंड मैच डिफरेंट डेटा टाइप्स इफ यू वांट टू यूटिलाइज द पावर ऑफ अरे इन योर सी प्रोग्राम. So each member in the group is referred to by its position. For example, assume the following group members where we have defined an array and suppose हम इस array को कहते हैं percentage. इस percentage के अंदर 48, 88, 34, 23 and 96. So कितने member हैं? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there are basically 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 members. Let's see. The fourth member is referred to as percentage 3. ये क्यों भाई? Fourth member 1, 2, 3, 4. This is called percentage 3. अगर ये 3 है तो फिर क्या ये 2 होगा, ये 2 है तो ये 1 है, और ये 1 है तो ये क्या होगा? ये obviously 0 होगा. So एक नई बात हमें ये पता चली कि हमारे मेंबर्स की जो पोजीशन है, जो सबस्क्रिप्ट है, जो मेंबर्स की पोजीशन को आइडेंटिफाई करता है, डेट स्टार्ट्स फ्रॉम 0. दिस इज द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट दैट यू शुड रिमेंबर कि सी लैंग्वेज में अरे का जो सबस्क्रिप्ट है डेट स्टार्ट्स फ्रॉम 0. मीन द फर्स्ट एलिमेंट ऑफ एन अरे शुड बी दी with the subscript 0. So percentage of 0 should contain first element, percentage of 1 should contain second element, percentage of 2 should contain third element, similarly the percentage of 3 should contain the fourth element. यही बात हमने यहाँ पर बताई. Thus in this example percentage of 3 refers to 23 and percentage of 4 refers to 96. 3 is here, percentage of 3 and percentage of 4, जो कि फिजिकली 4th और 5th है, लेकिन सबस्क्रिप्ट के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से ये 3rd and 4th है. ओके, सो जनरली हम परसेंटेज को वी कैन राइट डाउन p परसेंटेज पूरा लिख सकते हैं. आई हैव जस्ट स्किप्ड, I don't know why it's skipped. So it is percentage of I, where I can take a value from 0 to 4. So this percentage of 4 we can call it as, for example, percentage of I, and this I can have any value that goes from 0 to 4 in order to see this percentage. Okay, अभी थोड़ी देर में समझ आ जाएगा अगर अभी तक नहीं समझ आया, because I will be repeating it slowly and adding the new concepts. Here percentage is the PER is the subscripted variable array where I is the subscript. तो ये PER basically मैं कह रहा हूँ इस percentage को. Okay, somehow यहाँ पर और यहाँ पर I have skipped and I have instead of percentage I have used PER. So this is basically a subscripted variable. ये आपकी array है जो कि एक subscripted variable है और इसके जो subscripts हैं वो for that purpose we are using a subscript variable which is I, and we say that I ranges from 0 to जो उसका size है. Since it is starting from 0, so if you have declared an array from for 100 elements, so उसका subscript कहाँ से कहाँ तक जाएगा? From 0 to 99. क्यों? क्योंकि वो 1 से 100 नहीं होगा बल्कि 0 से 99 में होगा. That is the important concept that I have just taught to you. So an array is a collection of similar, means homogeneous elements. These elements could be all either integer और फ्लोट और करेक्टर और डबल. ये जो 4 वैलिड डेटा टाइप्स हैं इनमें से कोई एक वैलिड डेटा टाइप होगा, इसका मिक्स एंड मैच नहीं होगा. Usually the array of character is called a string. एक डेटा टाइप ऐसा है जो मैंने अभी तक जानबूझ के टच ही नहीं किया. For example, my name is Mumtaz. How should I handle Mumtaz in C language? अभी तक हमने उसको स्ट्रिंग को हैंडल नहीं किया, but very shortly, hopefully in the next lecture, this is the topic that I will introduce it to you. So remember that each element of any given array has a same size in bytes, क्योंकि अगर इंटीजर है तो 2 बाइट्स होगा, फ्लोट है तो 4 बाइट्स होगा, कैरेक्टर है तो 1 बाइट होगा, डबल है तो 8 बाइट होगा, और लॉन्ग इंटीजर है तो तब भी 8 बाइट होगा. Int a of 10 is an array of 10 integers, each of which has a unique name. अब नेम कैसे यूनिक होगा? नाम तो इस अरे का हमने ए रखा है. यूनिक इस तरह से होगा कि उसका सबस्क्रिप्ट जो है हम उसको चेंज करेंगे. ए ऑफ 0 फर्स्ट एलिमेंट, ए ऑफ 1 सेकेंड एलिमेंट, एंड ए ऑफ 9 10th एलिमेंट. Okay, and a is the name of the array, and 0 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 are the index of the array. Name of the array. So हम यूनिक नेम कैसे दे रहे? अरे का नाम तो वही रखते, then within the square brackets we are using index and we are changing the index. So 100 वेरिएबल डिफाइन करने की जरूरत नहीं है, हम एक अरे डिफाइन करते हैं of 100 वेरिएबल्स. We call it as average maybe, और एवरेज या परसेंटेज, और उसके सब साइज हम 100 डिक्लेयर करते हैं. अब एक हम उसका जो सबस्क्रिप्ट है उसको हम 0 से 100 तक वेरी करेंगे, और वो भी वेरी कैसे करेंगे? हमें उसको ये टाइपिंग नहीं करनी, बल्कि वी कैन यूज अ वेरिएबल एंड दैट वेरिएबल शुड गेट अ वैल्यू फ्रॉम 0 to 99. एंड हाउ कैन वी डू दैट? आई विल कम बैक टू इट इन फ्यू मिनट्स. सो द फर्स्ट एग्जांपल इज द introduction to definition of an integer a of 10. This is float 20. ठीक है, float b of 20. वेरिएबल नेम क्या है? b. साइज क्या है? 20. So ये b0 से लेके b19 तक you have defined 20 float variables, and but you have defined it as b of 20, which is a array that contains each element of that array is a float value, has a float value. Okay, we can similarly define characters also, but I am intentionally skipping characters that I promised to teach you in the next lecture. We can also define a 2-dimension array. This is another topic also, जो अभी सिर्फ मैं यहाँ पर टच कर रहा हूँ कि if you have got one set of this square brackets, जैसे कि यहाँ पर था, this was changed to 2 sets of these square brackets. इसको हम कहते हैं 1-dimension array, और इसको हम कहते हैं 2-dimension array. This 2-dimension array I will again gradually will go there and teach you. Array elements हम ऑलरेडी बात कर चुके हैं कि एवरी डेटा एलिमेंट जो है, जो हर वेरिएबल अरे का है, उसको अरे एलिमेंट कहते हैं. और अरे एलिमेंट को हम ऐसे ही यूज कर सकते हैं जैसे हम किसी वेरिएबल को यूज करते हैं. ओके, सो इन एन एक्सप्रेशन इंक्लूडिंग आर्गुमेंट्स हम यूज कर सकते हैं, जैसे कि यहां पर हमने यूज किया. हम इसको आर्गुमेंट के अंदर यूज कर सकते हैं. साइन इज ए फंक्शन जिसके आर्गुमेंट में हम a of I पास ऑन कर रहे हैं. cos इज ए फंक्शन जिसके आर्गुमेंट में हम इसको यूज कर रहे हैं. सो वी कैन यूज इट in the as an argument. We can just use it in the expression either here, or we can use it in the expression here. So we can use it anywhere where a variable is fits in. जहाँ जहाँ वेरिएबल आप यूज कर सकते हैं वहाँ पर आप अरे का एलिमेंट यूज कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि अरे का एलिमेंट भी प्रैक्टिकली सर्व जस्ट लाइक अ वेरिएबल. सो अरे एलिमेंट इन द मेमोरी, a collection of data elements of the same type stored contiguously in memory under one name. पहली बात मैंने आपको कही कि वो एक जैसे डेटा एलिमेंट्स हैं. अब एक नई शर्त भी लगा दी. They are stored contiguously. Contiguously का क्या मतलब है? One after the other without leaving any blank in between. यानी कि एक डेटा एलिमेंट खत्म होने के फौरन बाद दूसरा डेटा एलिमेंट, उसके खत्म होने के बाद तीसरा डेटा एलिमेंट. सो दे आर स्टोर्ड सिक्वेंशियली एंड कंटिग्यूअसली इनटू द मेमोरी लोकेशन. सिमिलर डेटा टाइप होगा, कंटिग्यूअसली स्टोर होगा मेमोरी में. ये दोनों शर्तें, और हर एलिमेंट जो है हमने पहले बताया कि वो सिमिलर है, दूसरे में हमने बताया कि कंटिन्यूअसली स्टोर होगा. ये भी बात हमने बताई कि हम एक सबस्क्रिप्ट की मदद से एक एलिमेंट से दूसरे एलिमेंट के ऊपर जंप कर सकेंगे. So what happens in the memory when we make this declaration? 16 bytes get immediately reserved in the memory, 2 bytes each for the 8 integers. ये किसकी हम बात कर रहे हैं? हम इस एग्जाम्पल की बात कर रहे हैं. If we declare integer array of 8, since there are 8 elements, अब हम assume करते हैं कि integer is of 2 bytes. Then there should be 8 into 2, 16 contiguous bytes in the memory are reserved whenever you declare integer array of 8. But suppose if the integer size is 4 byte, तो फिर कितना होगा? 4 into 8 is 32 bytes. So 32 contiguous bytes should be allocated by the system, means कि memory की 32 bytes will be reserved. Since the array is not being initialized, जिस तरह हम वेरिएबल को इनिशियलाइज करते हैं, so all 8 values present would be a garbage value. गार्बेज वैल्यू का क्या है कि जस्ट आपने स्ट्रक्चर खड़ा कर दिया बट उसके अंदर आपने वैल्यूज डिफाइन नहीं की. सिंस यू हैव नॉट डिफाइंड एंड इनिशियलाइज्ड एनी इनिशियल वैल्यू, सो इट शुड कंटेन सम गार्बेज वैल्यू. ओके, whatever be the initial value, all the array elements would always be present in contiguous memory location. So when we declare an array of integers with integer array of 8, so let us see this example, and we have not initialized it. What does it mean? It's mean that the values which are present and which are being shown in the container are the garbage values. These are all garbage values. These are all garbage values. We have not provided. So whatever that was present in the memory is there in the memory. Okay, and that we call it as a garbage value. So let's start to use it. How can we use it? Just like the variables, whenever you want to use a variable, you are required to declare the variable. And whenever you want to use an array, what you should do? You have to declare the array. So to begin with, like other variables, we need to declare an array. And how can we declare an array? Just like variable, आप पहले उसका need to provide the data type. Suppose it is an integer, so you define integer, then the name of the array, and then the size of the array. Okay, type of the array, name of the array, size of the array, and this is called the declaration of an array. So here we need to provide 3 items: the data type, name, size, and size should be enclosed in angle bracket, or this is the number that you can use it as a constant, or you can do it some other way also, that how you can use the define directive, and with the define directive you can define the size of the array also. So आप उसमें भी upper define कर सकते हैं, size define कर सकते हैं, or there could be some other way through which you can define the size of the array also. So this is called the declaration of an array. The generic form of the declaration of an array: data type, जो भी है मैंने आपको बताया, int is the underlying type of the array. ज़ाहिर है कि जो उसकी वेरिएबल की टाइप है वही array की टाइप होगी. Then comes the name of the array, the name assigned to the set of the memory locations. कोई नया concept नहीं है. Array size, this is the array size. You can use expression between the square brackets in requested number of data elements, each of which has a size equal to that of the data type. Okay, what does it mean? Again, if you have declared an array of 100 elements, then 100 elements of the size of the data type, if it is a type of integer or if it is a type of float, then the size of the each element is 4, and you have declared 100 arrays, so means 4 into 100 means 400 memory locations are reserved under the name that you have provided it here. Okay, assigning elements of an array. अब हमने अरे को डिक्लेयर कर दिया, अब उसके अंदर एलिमेंट्स को कैसे असाइन करें, डेटा को कैसे उसके अंदर असाइन करें. सो वंस एन अरे इज डिक्लेयर्ड, its individual elements are referred by a subscript. ये हम पहले डिस्कस कर चुके हैं कि हम उसके साइज वाले स्क्वायर ब्रैकेट्स के अंदर एक वेरिएबल यूज करेंगे और उस वेरिएबल की वैल्यू को चेंज करते चले जाएंगे. द नंबर इन द ब्रैकेट्स फॉलोइंग द अरे नेम, इसको हम यूज करेंगे एज ए सबस्क्रिप्ट. दिस नंबर स्पेसिफाइज द एलिमेंट पोजीशन इन द अरे. वो पोजीशन भी मैंने आपको बताई, स्टार्ट करेगा 0 से और अप टू n-1. n इज द साइज जो आपने डिफाइन किया, अरे का साइज है, और n-1 अगर आपका साइज इज आपने 100 एलिमेंट्स डिफाइन किया है तो लास्ट सबस्क्रिप्ट वैल्यू क्या होनी चाहिए? 99. क्यों? क्योंकि यू आर स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम 0. मार्क्स 2 इज नॉट द सेकंड एलिमेंट ऑफ द अरे. ये भी मैं बता चुके हैं. मार्क्स 2 कौन सा एलिमेंट है? यस, इट इज द थर्ड एलिमेंट. क्यों? क्योंकि marks of 0 is the first element, marks of 1 is the second element, and marks of 2 is the third element. The subscript is a variable that refers to the various elements of the array. This variable can take different values. अब हम ये देखते हैं कि different values हम इसको कैसे assign करते हैं. So this ability to use the variable as a subscript makes the array so useful and powerful. अदरवाइज तो फिर वही करना पड़ता हमें कि मार्क्स ऑफ 1, मार्क्स ऑफ 2, मार्क्स ऑफ 3, वो मार्क्स ऑफ 99, उसको सारे को लिखना पड़ता है. लेकिन हम इसको एज ए सबस्क्रिप्ट यूज करेंगे तो आप देखेंगे इट्स वेरी फास्ट एंड क्विक. फॉर i इज इक्वल टू 0, i रेंजेस फ्रॉम i लेस देन इक्वल टू 29, i प्लस प्लस. तो सपोज हमने 30 लोगों के लिए वी हैव डिफाइंड दिस अरे. So we can printf enter the marks. Scanf, the old scanf function, ampersand sign के साथ, just like we are using it like a variable. Marks एक वेरिएबल हो गया और सिर्फ उसके एलिमेंट को पिक करने के लिए स्क्वायर ब्रैकेट्स के अंदर i, और दिस वैल्यू ऑफ i is being provided through this for loop. So it will provide, this loop will run 30 times from 0 to 29. So you should be able to enter 30 marks for 30 students you can put in inside the marks array. The for loop will cause the process of entering the student marks from the user to repeat it 30 times. So start में इसकी वैल्यू i की होगी 0, फिर 1, फिर 2, फिर 3, and finally to end up to value of 30. The process will be repeated until 29. So after calculating, you can calculate the average. I think I might have calculated the average. Scanf. Okay, before I go and find out how can we compute the average, let's see what the scanf is doing here. The scanf function, we have used the address operator on the element marks of the array, just as we have used it earlier on the variable. जिस तरह हमने पहले यूज किया था ampersand rate और ampersand a, हम उसका एड्रेस पास ऑन करते हैं. Dear student, do you remember something? Functions के अंदर we talked about passing by reference. Passing by reference पे हम क्या करते हैं? वेरिएबल का एड्रेस पास ऑन करते हैं. और here I'm just repeating it again कि we are passing this address operator to the scanf function. So we are calling the scanf function by reference. Okay, just इस चीज को थोड़ा सा आपको क्वेश्चन देने के लिए कि passing by reference, जो कि हमने लास्ट लेक्चर में ही ये कॉन्सेप्ट पढ़ा है, और we know that, and since we have been using this scanf function for since from our maybe second or first lecture. Let's go with different examples. We have declared an array. We have put the data into the array. हमने declaration भी सीख ली, हमने उसमें डेटा को पुट करना भी सीख लिया. अब how should we be able to read the data from the array? So for that purpose I have got 3 examples. Example number 1, for I is equal to 0, I less than max, I plus plus, and a of I is equal to I times I. So 0 से लेके max तक का जो भी नंबर है उसकी स्केयर वैल्यूज जो है they will be generated and they will be put into this array. Example 2 में we have initialized the sum, and then what we have done, we have added value of j. So initially sum is 0, so you add b of 0, that should be equal to whatever the data that you have placed in the array b. It would have been better agar suppose is a ki jagah pe I used b here. Okay, if I use this b here, this is b, so I could have just used next. Sum is 0, next is this max, and then I just calculate the sum. Example 3, वो जो हमने 30 स्टूडेंट्स के मार्क्स में डेटा रीड किया था उस तमाम डेटा का हमने पहले सम निकाल दिया और फिर उस सम को हमने डिवाइड किया 30 पे, एंड वी हैव कंप्यूटेड द एवरेज ऑफ द क्लास ऑफ 30 स्टूडेंट्स. ओके, सो वी हैव लर्नड टू डिक्लेयर an array, we have learned to put the data into an array, we have learned how can we read the data from an array. Let's put all these things together. अब इसके अंदर हम एक डिफाइन कर रहे हैं इंटीजर, average, sum, I, and we have also providing the decoration of an array. Okay, all the initialization part is there. We have initialized sum, we have not initialized average, we have not initialized I. Okay, we have declared an array which is not initialized, just the declaration. For I is equal to 0, I less than 29, I. So you are asking the system, वही example है, just I am putting all these concepts together here. You marks को enter करेंगे और marks will be stored in here. Once the marks are stored here, so you could put this statement also here, but instead of doing that, हमने क्योंकि demonstrate करना था, I've used another for loop. Here I've just read the marks of each and every student here, sum here, cumulative sum, total sum, then I computed the average. Obviously this for statement, this for loop has just one statement, so I don't need the curly brackets here. So this is the body of this for loop. Average is computed and print the value. So we have learned how can we use arrays. We can declare an array, we can put the data in an array, we can read the data from an array, so we can use the array. It's very simple. But the story doesn't end here. Array initialization, मैंने आपसे पहले कहा था जब आप array को initialize नहीं करेंगे तो whatever the garbage value it has, that garbage value should always be there. So how can we initialize the value? We can initialize the variables. If we can initialize the variables, similarly we should be able to initialize the array also. अब array के each and every element को आपने initialize करना है. So let us see how to initialize an array while we are declaring it. हम उसको बाद में भी initialize कर सकते हैं, but at the time of the declaration we can also initialize an array. So I have given here 3 examples. Example number 1, int num of 6 is equal to 2, 4, 12, 5, 45 and 5. So this is num of 0, num of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here not provided the size, but I am providing the data. So 2, 4, 12, 5, 45, 5. What the system will do? It is a special concept. Just make a इसका size जो है system will determine by itself. Here float press 1, 2, 3, 4 values, no size again. System should calculate how many elements you have provided, put it up there, and the size is computed automatically. So if the array is initialized when it is declared, then mentioning the dimension of the array is optional. Okay, in example above 2 and 3, both examples के अंदर I have 2 in example 2, but also in example 3 also. Okay, the size has not been provided because I am using it in the initialization mode. If I am doing it declaration and also initialization simultaneously, then the system can compute the size by itself. Bounds checking. Input num 40. For I is equal to 0, I less than equal to 100, I plus plus. Num of I is equal to I. What's going on here? The array has been defined of size 40 and I'm using it for 100. So what will happen? It will not generate an error message. Error message to generate nahi hoga. To see what we do or what we are doing it beyond the size is the responsibility of the programmer. It's your responsibility. It's my responsibility. It's the responsibility of the person who is writing the code. So ये जो checking है कि आपने जो size declare किया था उससे beyond आप use नहीं कर सकते, this is not done by the system. So you have to live with it. और ये क्यों नहीं है? Once we will complete some advanced lectures, then we will understand why it is not done by the system. It is some sort of facilitation provided by the system to you, but it has some serious consequences. So in C there is no check to see if the subscript used for an array exceeds the size of the array. Data entered with the subscript exceeding the array size will simply be placed in the memory outside the array. अब क्या होगा जब 40 की array है, आप 100 के लिए जा रहे हैं, तो उस memory location से आप बाहर जा रहे हैं. अब memory location से जब आप बाहर जाएंगे, तो it may result to an unpredictable situation. आपके पास unpredictable situation आ जाएगी, to say that least, and there will be no error message to warn you. So this is something very serious, and you should know that. Or in some cases the computer may just hang. आपको पता नहीं कि आप क्या कर रहे हैं. So caution, caution, caution. It is the programmer responsibility to avoid index of end of an array. ये आपके programmer की responsibility है. Okay. So likely to corrupt the data, may cause segmentation fault. Segmentation fault क्या है? ये आपको I'll let you know maybe in some advanced lectures, but आपको इस वक्त सिर्फ ये बता दूं कि you are accessing some part of the memory that you are not supposed to access. So this is something क्योंकि we have already defined, we already have learned कि we can declare an array. Once we can declare an array, then we can just put the data into an array, then we can read the data, then we can use it. So you will start using it right now. But be careful. Be careful, because later on I will also explain you that how it can harm you. Okay, it can put your system into the situation where it hangs up, and you have to reboot the system and you have to break the program also. Declaring an array. इस कोर्स के अंदर declaration of array के अंदर आएगा static और automatic declaration of an array. Okay, that is this part. Array size determined explicitly or implicitly. ये भी हमें पता होना चाहिए. Although I have already used both of these without categorically defining this is an explicit definition size or it is an implicit size, but I will just show you later on. Automatic, जिस तरह आपके automatic variables हैं, इस तरह आपके array elements जो हैं, those could also be automatic. So array size may be determined at the runtime. This is beyond of this course. इसमें dynamic allocation है, memory की है, क्या है, that is not a part of this particular course. Maybe in some advanced course we will learn that, or maybe I'll touch it into some advanced lectures in which I'll give you some advanced concepts of the C programming. So declaration of an array outside of any function. जिस तरह हम किसी function के outside पे जब हम किसी वेरिएबल को इनिशियलाइज करते हैं, तो इट इज कॉल्ड एज external variable, global variable. We can also define the static. We can use the word static, or we can use the word constant. So whatever we have learned with the variables, we can do that. Okay, we can also combine the concept that we have learned today or in the previous lecture is the macros. So we can use the class size with the help of this define directive, and we can then use this class size in defining the array. Double B class size, so this 73 will be replaced. Why? Because this macro template will be expanded, or this 73 will be replaced here if we get this value. Const in n elements. Okay, this is a static value because we have used const term. So this value जो है n elements remains 25, and you will not be able to change that. So but this const n elements, you can use it to declare the size of an array. So you can declare the size of an array outside of any function which is always static, and then since you are outside the function, then how should you handle the size of the array? So I have given you few examples through which you can control the size of the array if you are declaring it outside any function. और जब आप function के अंदर declare कर रहे होते हैं तो you know that कि the variable is automatic, or if you are declaring an array, then the array is also an automatic. Some examples of array initialization. Once again, you can define initialization, जो भी मैंने आपको बताया था तरीका, static or automatic, if you are doing it inside. Okay, you can do that. You can also use this expression also. 2 multiplied by n, 4 multiplied by n, 8 multiplied by n, 16 multiplied by n, 12 multiplied by n. Okay, and then you just need to define n here somewhere before that, before you are going to use it here. So this is static or automatic variables, and this is B20, 2, 4, 8, 6, 32. Now you have defined the size of an array is equal to 20. But the number of elements that you are providing are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, only 5 elements here. So the remaining elements, what will happen to the remaining elements? The remaining unspecified elements are guaranteed to be 0. Unspecified elements, अब ये garbage नहीं है. They are guaranteed. Unspecified elements are guaranteed to be 0. क्योंकि यहाँ पर आपने इसको initialize कर दिया है और remaining part को आपने initialize नहीं किया. So those are automatically initialized to be equal to 0. Then integer C4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have defined the size is equal to 4, but you are providing the 5 element. Here, since you are doing it at the time of initialization, therefore the bond checking is there, because it's a runtime. It's not runtime, it's compilation time. The compiler has computed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but you have given 4. So the compiler detects too many initialization values, so the compiler should give you an error here. Okay, so these are the examples of the initialization. I just may take a few more. Implicit array size determination. अभी मैंने ये आपको examples तो बता दी थी, but I didn't use the word implicit array size. This size, the compiler counts 31, 28, 31, 30, 31. This the compiler will compute, and compiler say that it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So the compiler said that there are 12 elements. So compiler will determine the size, and this determination of size is called implicit array size determination. Okay, so जब आप initialization में, if you are providing the data, then the number of elements that you provide helps the compiler to compute the implicit size of the data. Okay, I think the up to this point I should stop, and I have given you sufficient concepts that you should be able to use the arrays. So I will go to the advanced features in the next lecture. So before I conclude, let us quickly revise what we have learned in the arrays. An array is a collection of similar data elements. You have defined an array with one name. You have given the array one single name. So the association to this one single array is the number of elements, but your responsibility is now that each and every elements should have the same data type. अब आप ऐसा नहीं करेंगे कि आपने एक इंटीजर एरे आपने डिफाइन की है 0 1 2 3 4 एलिमेंट्स, तो आपने उसमें इंटीजर लोड किए हैं, एलिमेंट नंबर ऑफ 5 यू वांट दैट दिस शुड हैव द फ्लोटिंग वैल्यू or a real value or a double value or it should have a character value or may should have a character string. You cannot do that. Okay, that's an important concept. Next मैंने आपको बताया the first element in the array is numbered 0. यानी कि array का जो पहला एलिमेंट होता है it's not called the first element but it is called the 0 element. क्यों? क्योंकि always the array starts from the 0. Okay, if the array starts from the 0 then the first element is always 0. एक बड़ी आपको इंटरेस्टिंग बात बताऊं, usually the computer programmer जो है if someone is required to go to floor number 5 so it press on the left the floor number 4. Okay, we are so used to it with the C programming. तो अगर कभी C प्रोग्रामर को 5वें फ्लोर पे जाना हो तो वो लिफ्ट में नंबर 4 का बटन दबाता है. डोंट डू दैट बट बी केयरफुल व्हाइल यू आर डूइंग दी प्रोग्रामिंग. एलिमेंट इज वन लेस देन द साइज ऑफ द मेमोरी. ये भी मैंने आपको बताया. इफ यू हैव डिक्लेयर्ड 100 एलिमेंट्स so what should be the last subscript? Last subscript should not be 100 but it should be 1 less than that. So the highest subscript is n minus 1. So if you have declared 100 elements then the last subscript value should be equal to 99. An array is also known as a subscripted variable. ये वेरिएबल जो है आम वेरिएबल से डिफरेंट है, इसको हम कहते हैं सबस्क्रिप्टेड वेरिएबल. और जो उसका सबस्क्रिप्ट होता है जो उसकी डायमेंशन को कंट्रोल करता है उसको मैंने कह दिया उसको सबस्क्रिप्ट कहते हैं. ओके, बिफोर यूजिंग एन अरे इट्स टाइप एंड डायमेंशन मस्ट बी डिक्लेयर्ड. हाउएवर बिग एन अरे इट्स एलिमेंट्स आर ऑलवेज स्टोर्ड इन कंटिग्यूअस मेमोरी लोकेशन. How big? However नहीं है. How big है ये? This is not however big. How big an array is? जितनी मर्जी आप बड़ी array define करें, इसके each and every element must store contiguously into the memory location. ये भी मैं इसको आपको बताऊंगा कि how the system access each element. So उस वक्त आपकी समझ में आएगा कि why each and every element should be stored consecutively into the memory location. So this is a very important point which we should discuss it in more detail in our later lectures. So students, today we have completed the topic of the preprocessor directives, and the later part I have introduced you a very important data structure, a very important facility that is available in your C programming which is called arrays. So please go through all the slides once again, read and listen very carefully, because these are very useful concepts that we will be utilizing in our future. अगले लेक्चर में फिर हाजिर खिदमत होऊंगा. Till then, खुदा हाफिज.